why don't we start off? Why don't you guys tell a little bit about yourself and kind of the work you do right now?
Okay, well, I'm Holly Windhorst. I'm the director of the Massac County Drug Awareness Coalition in Metropolis, and I've been doing that volunteer. I've been doing it for 9 years, right?
Lose track of time.
Yeah. No, not 9 years, 7 years. And as like staff, about 4 years. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I
Now
didn't try to calculate.
you came from the court system before that.
Yeah, I started out. I have a degree in criminal justice
Okay.
and a master's in public administration.
Okay.
And so yeah, I started out working as a probation officer for like 6 or 7 years. So really got a good feel
Absolutely.
of the issues surrounding substance abuse with working in that. And then my second child was born, so I just decided to become a stay-at-home mom for a while.
Yeah.
But around the time that he was born, McDAC started. It actually started by Natalie Quinch. At the time, she was working at Massac County Mental Health, and we were just having a lot of meth lab busts, and it was just seeming to become a bigger problem. And so she was like, "What can we do?" And so she started the coalition. And so she got a bunch of people together, law enforcement, preachers, just kind of everybody that she could talk to. And so that kind of allowed me to stay involved in, that arena without actually working. I could still volunteer with the coalition
Mm-hmm.
without, having to commit a full-time job to it at that time. And so that really worked for me. And then I kind of wanted to take a bigger role with the coalition, so I took on like the youth advisory council. I got it started at Massac County High School in 2014, and so kind of been off and on heading that ever since. And then eventually I became the director of McDAC in 2016, volunteer, and then I started substitute teaching also.
Okay.
So that's kind of like another perspective too.
You have a diverse background.
Yeah, I do. And then worked at the state's attorney's office for a while after that. So that was another, perspective that I kind of already had, but a little bit different. And then we ended up, our coalition got a drug-free communities grant.
Okay.
From SAMHSA. And so, and the Office of National Drug Control Policy. And so that allowed us to then like hire staff because there was a lot of work to be done in managing that grant. And that's
Sure,
a
absolutely.
prevention grant.
Okay.
So it's geared towards youth, and you kind of focus on two substances, but really you can, kind of, prevention is prevention. So you're working towards reducing all substance use. And so we've been working on that for a while. And in the beginning of McDAC, there was work on recovery. And then it kind of really got to where it was just a lot of work on youth, and prevention. And then about a year and a half ago, people started reaching out to me from our community, wanting to do something in recovery.
Okay.
And so I just, we just didn't really have the capacity at the moment to do anything with it. So I was kind of keeping it in the back of my mind, trying to start a recovery committee, but, I was the only person working there at the time. So it just wasn't happening. And then, I don't know, somehow we got connected, you and I.
Yeah.
And then that's how I got connected with CERN. And then it's just kind of like fallen into place. You told me about Recovery Corps. And so we got Jordan, and then now we have, a ROSC grant to start. Well, we already have a council, basically.
Yeah. You were already kind of doing that work with the R Corp grant, right?
Well, no, with just McDAC in general.
Yeah.
A coalition that meets monthly. And
Right.
so
And
it's
McDAC's not connected to the R Corp grant, right? It was because you were already doing that before the R Corp grant, right?
Yeah, McDAC was just running on no grants.
Sure.
Really. I mean, maybe a
Passion.
small one here and there. Yeah, definitely. We had fundraisers. We have a lot of generous people that had donated to us, but up until the very end of 2019, we were just running on volunteers and donations, and then we kind of started getting more grants then. So that's really just allowed us to, blow up in what we've been able to do and get more staff and just get more capacity. I mean, when you're able to spend, three full time employees working on this stuff instead of, volunteers when they have time, it's just, you can do so much more.
It absolutely makes a world of difference. I know here at Take Action Today, we were all volunteer until the fall of 2021. Yeah, and it does. It makes a world of difference what you can do when you have people that have that full time capacity to sit down or go out in the community and talk to people and work with people and start pulling things together. And that's what our rural communities have needed for so long, is those dedicated people to be able to do that. In the past, it's typically been your mental health care providers who are overburdened and underfunded, especially in our region, so they really don't have the time to get outside from behind those desks and go out into the community and talk to people and to pull people together in those coalitions is sometimes a little awkward for them, so having people that can do that on a full-time basis, because one of the things that I've learned about this is that it's not so much just about direct service about what our community needs, but they need those greater coalitions. There are so many people doing great work, pulling in different directions, getting people to the table, directing conversations to make sure they stay in a positive manner, and then getting people to be on the same page and pull in the same direction is a challenge, and it's one that is definitely needed. I think that's one of the things I love about what you guys were doing there with MIGDAC. It's been a pleasure absolutely working with you guys. Really great to see you guys get started with Recovery Corps. Jordan, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you come to find yourself?
Where I'm at?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Jordan Strong. I grew up in Metropolis and struggled with addiction of many different kinds all throughout my life. And then in early 2019, I went to a teen challenge. Completed that, and then from there I went to an Oxford house because I wasn't really ready to go home yet. And so I ended up spending about a year there and came home, and I was just working like a regular, 9 to 5 job and, to take care of bills and everything. And then a friend of my mom's told me about a job at McDack and said that she thought I would be a good fit and just wanted to let me know. Well, I looked it up and was super scared, but I knew that it was worth a shot. And I'm really glad that I did. So it's actually through Recovery Corps. I'm the recovery project coordinator at McDack.
That's awesome.
Through them. So it's been a really wonderful couple months. I just started there the very last few days of August. And since then, I've had a lot of really great experiences and opportunities that have opened up. We've been able to do a lot with branching out into recovery. I know McDack's already been working in prevention for a long time and doing some things in recovery, some things in recovery, but wanting to kind of make that a more broader spectrum. And so it's been really exciting to be a part of that.
That's awesome. And you got a great group of people to work with.
Yeah.
One of the things with that I love about Recovery Corps is that's really how we grew. Like you said, having that full-time staff to dedicate to building the recovery community. When we first started full-time, it was me as the executive director, and then we had 2 Recovery Corps staff.
Yeah.
And they made a world of difference. It's so fun to tell people that, I didn't write most of our programs. Our staff did. Our Recovery Corps people did.
Yeah.
This is not just a just any type of training program. This is a life-changing program and a community-changing program that provides opportunities to people who maybe don't necessarily have the track record between their active use and their recovery to be able to get jobs in this field, because that's a challenge. To work in mental health and professional health is typically you have to have a lot of education to get into that type of field. And then for people like us, our past tend to exclude us from some of those opportunities. So Recovery Corps opens that door to people. Our 2 staff that started with Recovery Corps with us, now we were able to hire on full time.
That's great.
And it was able to give them good, livable wage earning jobs, where a lot of us in recovery oftentimes get stuck in low wage earning jobs because of our past behavior, because like I know for me, I had a GED until recently. That very limits your job opportunities, especially in an area like Southern Illinois where there's not a lot of job opportunities. So to be able to provide employment for people, a lot of the conversation typically goes towards housing and bed space, making sure people, and it's very important for people to have a safe, secure place to sleep and to live. But if they don't have economic opportunity, they're limited in what they can do, and they're still kind of almost stuck in that same rut.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to give housing opportunities to people. It's great to be able to give people support services, but we got to find a way to give people in recovery good jobs,
Yeah.
because that's what's going to bolster their recovery in the long run. I think that's one of the great things that Recovery Corps does. And then even better, it gives us an opportunity in our rural communities to benefit from that lived experience that people have.
Yeah.
So I like I said, we're terribly indebted to the Recovery Corps program. It's amazing. We love it. We tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
We have 5 people from Recovery Corps this year.
Yeah.
And we're looking to see that hopefully expand throughout the state. So.
Oh, for sure. And I'm super grateful even for a lot of things. It's helped me grow in my recovery. Not that I was at like a standstill in it, but just in a different realm, like to develop professionally.
Yes.
I knew that I wanted to do something and help people and kind of share the freedom that I found. But how do you do that?
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a foot in the door, any kind of education or training. Well, I've received a lot. And then just working day to day with Holly and her kind of showing me, how you interact in conversations and, what's the best way to go about things, paperwork and, things like that, how to just do all of it. So I've learned a lot the last couple months.
What do you think has been some of the most challenging things that you've had to deal with? So what type of work did you do before?
I just worked at a fabric store,
Okay.
like cutting mail orders.
So it was a completely different type of professional setting.
Yeah.
What type of challenges did you face making that transition?
I would say the biggest challenge was just kind of getting over my own self-consciousness. Sitting at a table with a state's attorney and a police officer in a meeting, they have never treated me or spoke to me in any sort of way other than polite and kind, but in my own head, like who are you to be sitting at this table? But doing that and pushing through that kind of has helped me grow a lot too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does, really pushing and challenging yourself, getting outside of your comfort zone like that. I've been taken aback at moments too, by the people I found myself sharing space with, like you talk about, people with much higher educations than I've had, very different paths. Some of them, like sitting down with senators and talking to them and stuff, it's not somewhere I'd ever imagined myself to be.
Yeah.
And then to see myself there, and it's all around a recovery type of context. So it's not like I've gone out and done something, not to sound minimalistic to recovery, but done something, superhuman. But it's recovery. It's what I had to do to survive. And now we're almost starting to be seen as almost like rock stars and superstars in some spaces, because we come in with our lived experience, and there a lot of people see that as maybe a piece that's been missing. From things a little bit. Holly, what has it been like I say, working with Recovery Corps from your standpoint at MCDAC and trying to learn how to incorporate what they do?
Well, I mean, working with Recovery Corps themselves was great, as far as the process. Just onboarding someone, getting them hired and everything, that was just super easy, and they were really helpful to answer all my questions, and so that part was good. And then Jordan's saying she's learned so much from me, but it's I've learned so much from her that I just can't, she is such a valuable resource to MCDAC, was just the perspective that she brings, as someone that's actually been in the place that we're trying to prevent people from being. That's really just a great perspective to have just every day, just ask her, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And so
now, do you have any type of lived experience with substance use, or what's your history with substance use outside of professionally? Any?
No.
Yeah. So.
None. Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, I worked for an attorney, and he did a lot of defense cases. So that is kind of, I guess, what kind of introduced me
Okay.
to that world. And I just thought, I don't know, that's kind of how I got into criminal justice, and and then you start getting into, then it's just a lot of it revolves around substance abuse.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It intersects in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people oftentimes focus on substance use, but there's so many different things really that substance use kind of weaves itself. It's like a theme inside of a book. It's not the whole story, but it's this theme that just intersects with everything.
Yeah.
So we do a lot with homelessness. I know you guys work with a lot of homelessness in Metropolis. Have a lot of issues similar to what we have here in Franklin County. But and some people want to see it as, oh, well, those are drug addicts. Well, sure, some of them have a substance use issue, but some of them are really just dealing with a housing issue, a lack of economic opportunity, a lack of education issue. That if we maybe can actually start supporting some of our community members rather than scorning them and isolating them to themselves, maybe not so many people need to go to treatment. Maybe we can support people in their own communities by starting to help them get life skills that they might not have from their home. We run into, I feel like we're really getting into a place in Southern Illinois where we're having intergenerational issues with people in and out of incarcerated situations. And obviously with the substance use, and we see it in our housing and poverty, just no jobs. And it all kind of culminates. And substance use just happens to be something that a lot of people will do in those situations. So we could take a lot of people and we could cure their substance use, but the rest of their life is still going to be this 3-ring circus. How do we get that circus under control and get them to having healthy, productive lives is a challenge.
Yeah.
So you started out as a probation officer. Have you seen your personal views towards people who use substances change over the years?
Yes.
How could you explain that a little bit?
Yes. I mean, I became a probation officer pretty well fresh out of college, and so didn't have a lot of experience at that time with really anything.
Sure, yeah, I bet.
As you're so young. But
that's the truth, man. Life has a way of teaching you some great lessons.
Right. And it's just people are coming in and they're relapsing, and it's just like you've got this probation order in front of you, and it's like they've got to get all this stuff done on this probation order. Whether it's treatment, pay their fines, community service, and it's like you're thinking about that, and so I don't know, it's just like now that I'm kind of working from a different perspective, there's maybe things I would go back and change about just my mindset during that time. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but that it's different now than it was, and just the things I've experienced. And like I moved to Metropolis to be a probation officer, so I didn't know anybody. I didn't have like the background of, well, I know where this person was, we didn't, like some people maybe grew up in Metropolis,
Sure.
and so they would know where someone started and
Yeah,
where
yeah,
they went
absolutely.
out.
Another family
have
here.
that.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm just meeting this person for the first time, and here's their situation.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and then also like, the longer you go and you see people that are, using, and then they come out of it. And it's like, well, you got to have that experience too of seeing that happen to people. And it's like, that just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I feel like, I know that there are a lot of young people that get steered towards criminal justice, towards being probation officers and those types of things. And like you talk about, when you don't have that life experience and all you do is have this ideology in your head about what people need to do, it's a lot different than, years down the road when you've seen all the different aspects in life, how it's not so black and white. There's a lot of gray area in it. And it's hard getting that through a young probation officer's head, because they're real black and white. They're really rigid. I feel like, and I think probation officers do a much needed service in our communities. Like a lot of mental health providers, they're overburdened and underpaid too. but they seem to be the probation officer community, and not all of them. You know, I mean, there are some and it does tend to be the ones who are a little more longer in the tooth, been around a little bit longer, who are more open-minded to recovery types of philosophies and principles. Most of them seem to be real resistant towards. It's just a lot of let's lock them back up. It's a lot of let's keep punishing them. Let's be harder on them, you know. And just that life experience shows you that it's, like I said, it's just not that easy. It's a real challenge for people, especially in some of our rural communities, because you don't have the support resources to get into recovery. What type of challenges are you guys seeing around Massac County and around the metropolis area in particular? What types of things do you guys usually run into as far as substance use or homelessness or anything?
Well, meth
Yeah.
is, one of the biggest problems. We were just talking to the hospital today. We met with someone there, and she was just saying that over the past 2 years, just the meth people coming in that are using just seems to be increasing.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of like, that's always kind of been the problem, and sometimes it, maybe it goes to more opiates, and then now it's then it's liquid meth, and then there's fentanyl in the mix, and it's always all been there.
Yeah.
But it's just like, what's the big problem? And I think right now meth and fentanyl are the big problems, which is not really surprising to probably anyone. So
yeah, and that's what we see in most of our counties too, is a lot of contaminated methamphetamine more than just a straight opioid. We do have people that just use the opioid. Someone will just use the fentanyl, but most of them it's the methamphetamine, and then you get into the contaminated meth, or you get somebody that's been in jail or been in prison for a while, and they come out and they're not used to that, and they get an overdose and get a hot shot or something, and now you got an overdose on your hands. And if it's fentanyl, sometimes it takes several shots of Narcan. A lot of places still don't have Narcan. That's one of the biggest challenges we feel like we're facing right now, is how to get more Narcan out and get people to use it appropriately.
Yeah.
We've had some encounters recently with first responders almost talking about kind of like using it almost punitively with people, just to kind of because it kicks you into that withdrawal. So it's almost like a punishment to somebody, if they're being a little bit out, their behavior's a little bit uncontrollable. You hit them with a couple doses of Narcan, snaps them into withdrawal, makes them actually more irritable. But it's just a real stigmatizing attitude towards people with substance use issues. Yeah. And it's a challenge getting over that stigma. What type of responses do you guys see in your community to recovery types of principles and ideas? How do you guys get much community support?
Yeah, we do. I mean, one of the things that's kind of that I always enjoy just a little bit is when we go to talk to somebody, and then people find out that Jordan was one of those people.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. So, it's kind of like, hey, they can come out of it and come out on the other side. But I mean, I think that, we've met with a lot of community leaders and different sectors, and I mean, they're definitely like open to it. They know there's a problem and they want to do something, knowing it's a big hill to climb, but then the stigma's out there too, for sure.
Yeah. Like she talks about, so you have to notice that when people catch on to that, they're like, oh, you're one of those people.
Yeah, it usually is just like, it just kind of happens organically, in conversation whenever we're meeting with somebody. And I haven't encountered anyone with like a real negative attitude by any means, but just maybe not like a fully understanding, and so me being able to, when given an opportunity, shared that, I've just got 4 years in October.
That's awesome.
And they're like, wow, they already wanted to be on board with anything that anyone's doing in recovery to help, or even the possibility of potentially helping. And then they see somebody like me who, 5 years ago was one of those people walking around town with a backpack that had absolutely nothing and nowhere. And so that's really encouraging to me that people are starting, I feel like the tide is kind of turning with the way that they look at it, and not that they didn't think it would be a good thing, but just almost, is it possible,
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
it's starting to kind of pick up a little bit of momentum with people being able to tangibly see that, yeah, it is
Absolutely.
possible, and be able to see, instead of this person walking down the street and think whatever they thought a year ago, like, hey, maybe that'll be them in 3 years, or you know what I mean, or even
absolutely.
be willing to stop and ask them, even just saying hi to somebody a lot of times is like, okay, I am a person, maybe I can, turn things around. So
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think with what we do as people with lived experience, inspiring hope is one of
Yeah.
the coolest things
Yeah.
I think that we do. Especially people that come from, I know where I came from, I was the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my active use was as a young man, as a juvenile, and then as a young adult. And I was the exact opposite of what anybody imagines me as now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was probably the worst. I viewed myself as one of the worst people in the world. And for intents and purposes, I probably was, and then to hit that 180 and to be where I'm at now, and then to be in a room with people who their sons or brothers and sisters are actively using, and they just feel like they're never going to change.
Yeah.
So it's not only inspiring hope to the person who's actively using that they can change, but inspiring hope to the family and then the communities.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the coolest things about where the recovery movement is now, where it's about coming out of the AA basements in the AA meetings in the basements of a church,
Yeah.
to where now we're up in the town squares. We're talking about recovery.
Yeah.
We're telling people, no, I have been through this before, and you can recover. We do change, and that's one of the really cool things I think we try to do at Take Action Today is put that different face on. It's not about the substance use, it's about the recovery.
Yeah.
And even in that, so much of the conversation was dominated by prevention and treatment for years, to where now it's like recovery is starting to come into the light, where you're starting to see a lot of recovery language written into grant funding, and a lot of national policies and stuff starting to use the term recovery rather than prevention and treatment. Most of the time, it's always been, captured underneath that, but people beginning to see that people do change, and I think that's one of the hardest things to show people in rural communities, because they don't see it. All they ever see is the gossip on Facebook or the police reports about people. They never see the people who have gone and gotten in recovery for 4 years or 20 plus years, because typically we fade into the community.
Yeah.
A person, what I found generally in about the first year or two, has a lot of passion to get involved in service work. That's why we try to capture those people and get them involved in training programs like Recovery Corps and like our CRS training program, so that as they move through that phase, they can move into actual service positions where they can use that lived experience and use those skills. Because if they don't, most of us tend to go get careers. I got into the coal mines. I was in the coal industry for 11 years. I was coaching youth softball and travel softball, and nobody knew anything about my past. And when I came out and started talking about it, it did kind of change. So I did catch some glances out of the side of people's eyes after that. I was a little disappointed in that, but I wasn't surprised too.
Yeah.
But more people just actually saw, because it inspired them, because they had loved ones and stuff in active addiction that they felt would never change, and now they see that people do change. People do recover.
Yeah.
And it, like I say, it just inspires hope in people.
Yeah.
So what types of you guys have any big plans coming up for 2023?
Well, yeah, we were talking about that today.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we're working through, what we've got to do for our new Ross grant.
Yeah,
Still
gotta
kinda
get those
learning the
deliverables
ropes on
figured
that. So we're working through that. Kind of on the prevention side, I mean, we're going to CADCA Forum in Washington in a few
What is
weeks.
that?
It's so CADCA stands for Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America.
Okay.
I always have to think about it.
There's so many acronyms.
Yeah, and it's pretty connected with our Drug-Free Communities grant. They want us to attend the trainings that CADCA puts on. So we're going to that.
And what did you say? Where it was at?
It's in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's kind of something just for staff, but this year anyway. But as far as then prevention, we've got like Prevent Child Abuse Month in April coming up. So we usually do something for that, some kind of event. And then we have an event at the junior high in May called Truth and Consequences. And it's just like, you know, you give each kid a scenario that has to do with substance use. And then they kind of walk through the steps of what would happen to them if they did this, if this happened to them. And we have all these community partners come and help us with that, like the police and judge, state's attorney, probation, hospital, Massac Mental Health, health department, churches, and then it takes about 70 volunteers or so to pull
Man,
it
it sounds
off.
like a pretty big ordeal.
Yeah, it is. And so, but it's very educational for the kids. You know, I think they really learned something going through that. So yeah.
You guys still have a heavy emphasis towards youth. I mean, is that
Yeah.
part of because you still have a heart for young people, or
Well, we still
You
have
know,
that grant. Is
yeah,
one of the reasons.
I got you. Okay.
But we definitely, I mean, we have our youth advisory council, and that kind of, you know, leads us. They do stuff too, like they're doing a quit vape thing right
Yeah.
now at the high school. They
I
just
think that's one of the
started.
neatest things because
Mhm.
y'all are the only people
Yeah.
I've seen that do that, have like a youth advisory council. I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's great working with the youth, and they kind of have their own leadership camp that we've taken them to before, and so that's a lot of fun because there's just so much energy and
Yeah, I bet.
um,
A lot of
Oh,
energy.
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's like you know, we really like working with them too. So, and we kind of let them guide their activities, and we just kind of support it and fund it and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish there was more stuff for young people. I know that's what we get. We constantly get asked about services for juveniles and for young
Mhm.
people, and I mean, there's such a need out there. It's
Mhm.
almost, it just seems crazy that there's not more people working in that field. You know, especially because everybody identifies the need for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but hopefully one day we'll have some more resources there. You were talking about kind of the evolution of your own thinking about recovery and things. Wanted to mention about that too is that, you know, over that time period you're talking about working in the field, the attitudes have changed towards recovery.
Oh yeah.
I know through my years in the coal mines, I wasn't very involved in the recovery community until the last few years. I came back to it and I noticed that the attitudes and philosophies had completely changed. It was so much more open-minded. It
Mhm.
was no longer just AA and 12-step, and it was no longer just abstinence-based,
Mhm.
you know, because I count my 22 years in recovery, I count a long relapse period in that because there were still other aspects in my life where I was putting together and putting in order. I had relapsed and returned to use and drinking for a few years,
Mhm.
caused a world, almost lost my whole family and everything again. But still, it was part of my recovery process, so I
Mhm.
still count it. And then for years after that, I would struggle with trying to socially drink. I would go back and I would try to, and it never worked out well for me.
Mhm.
But then going through all that stuff, I would have never felt like I was in recovery. I would have felt like, no, I'm just continuing to struggle with my relapse or continuing to struggle with my own
Yeah.
use. Now I see where recovery is a very long process.
Mhm.
You know, and as we look at that breadth of work across my life, I see where healing has been taking
Mhm.
place. I see where growth was taking place, and eventually the substances did fade away again to where there was. I don't even think measure it as abstinence because it just kind of wasn't a thing anymore.
Mhm.
You know, I kind of believe that when people are healthy, when they're whole, you know, and we have a lot of these internal issues solved, people enter a different relationships with substances,
Mhm.
and you don't have that need for them anymore
Yeah.
sometimes, and so that's why for me I feel like the emphasis should be more on like the holistic aspect of people's lives rather
Yeah.
than just the substance use.
Yeah.
But like I say, recovery has the meaning of recovery has changed a lot over the years.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about that the other day about how a lot of times people are not using substances, but they still are living
Absolutely.
a lifestyle
absolutely.
as if they were. And that's always been interesting to me. And it just, you know, goes to show that you can be technically sober, but not sober minded, and
Yes.
not gaining anything back or restoring or healing, whether inside or outside, situations. So that's definitely
Absolutely.
something.
In AA, they used to, you talk about the dry drunk. That guy, he was sober, but he was just absolutely miserable, was a jerk to everybody, and he was, like I say, he wasn't using, but he really wasn't in recovery.
Yeah.
He wasn't working his steps, wasn't healing internally on that
Yeah.
spiritual journey and
Yeah.
stuff. So you see that you can take the substance use out of people's lives and then them still just be a disaster,
Yeah.
still be just as miserable,
For sure.
and now you've taken their only coping skill.
Yeah.
So now they're probably, like I say, even more of a disaster mentally.
Yeah. That's one of the main things for me is learning those coping skills, because life is just
Absolutely.
life, and you're always going to have difficult days or situations, and you got to learn how to sit in that and deal with it and come out on the other side without anything else other than just your own thought processes and how you handle things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I battle with co-occurring disorders. I have a mental health diagnosis from when I was younger, bipolar. Looking back now, I see for a long time I thought I had gotten past that. I was healed or whatever from it. Now I look back and I see where I still battle some of those symptoms. I've just learned better to cope with them. It wasn't ever that and I really think that that's where we are with a lot of once things actually become a disorder. I don't know that you ever completely heal from them. You just learn to cope with them better, and for intents and purposes, you are. I mean, I guess kind of healed in this life from those, even though you still deal with those internally. And that's why I feel like patience in the area of relapse and return to use is so important. Because we all have those slips, and it's not always about just using. Sometimes it's mentally, and we have to be able to move past that without feeling like we're going back to square one. What type of coping skills do you think have you found to be the most valuable for you?
Well, communication, being able to
Yeah.
talk about an issue, or being able to be patient even with myself to plan something, or to problem solving skills.
Yeah.
As to where before something stressful, well, I just didn't deal with it, and I went and got high. I didn't have my license for 6 years because I couldn't deal with figuring out how to take care of it, which in hindsight, it was a blessing. I was using drugs and didn't need a license.
Sure.
That would have just added to the possible, bad situations.
Yeah, but that's not why you weren't getting your license.
It was because I couldn't.
overwhelming
I
to
would
deal with the
call and they would
process.
be like, "What?" And I was like, I can't handle this. And so I couldn't even do that. And now, some things get frustrating, but it's like rewarding just to be able to make a phone call like that and figure it out and deal with it and be able to take care of just normal things. So that's definitely.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed in my own personal growth is that I react to stress a lot better than I used to. I mean, it would be, I've never been a violent person, but I've kicked a couple cabinet doors just out of frustration, or something silly. I've never was one of those punch drywall Kyle drinking Monster kind of people. But, I've kicked a hole in a couple cabinet doors to be frustrated, especially trying to put something together. A chair, putting together one of these chairs a long time ago would have broke me down. I'd be like, throwing stuff and... Man, but learning how to cope with those things, how to deal with things, how to problem solve and think about things. These are skills really that all people need. And even a lot of people, we refer to them jokingly sometimes as normies, but even that normies don't develop a lot of time because they don't have to.
Yeah.
Where we are forced to survive, but if we're going to recover from this disease, we have to learn these coping skills, and at first it seems like it's a bit of a disadvantage, but later on it turns out to be an advantage.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about how through recovery, especially through church and through faith and stuff, we can use what was meant to destroy us now to do good with.
Yeah.
And seeing people do that is amazing.
Yeah.
I know that's one of my greatest thrills. I enjoy so much more seeing my staff receive accolades and receive pats on their back than I do me receive them.
Yeah.
Because it's like I say, seeing people grow to that point, develop those skills, and then use them.
Yeah, I was actually the mail lady today. Whenever she came by, we just got to talking, and I got brought up about how my mistakes that I made are actually fueling like my purpose in life, and it's potentially can help so many people that are struggling with similar things. So
Absolutely.
that's just absolutely amazing that you brought that up too. She'll
Yeah.
think that's not funny.
Well, and I think that what makes our position as peer specialists, different is that the ability to disclose those things, where especially like clinicians oftentimes can't disclose those things. They can't
Yeah.
share about their personal life.
Yeah.
They have to maintain that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're able to, and there's a certain amount of learning that comes along with that. You have to learn how to manage those boundaries well. But we can disclose those issues to people, and we don't have to hide them.
Yeah.
I know for me, a long time, I was really scared that people would find out about my past, especially as a young softball coach. I loved coaching softball. I loved working with the young athletes, spending time with my daughter. My daughter was a softball player. But a lot of the times early on, I was deathly afraid that people were going to find out that I was a convicted felon, or that I'd been through these issues, or somebody would have gone to church to me and knew some of my testimony from years before when I was a little more raw in recovery, and that it would get used against me. And that never happened.
Yeah.
But it was always a fear. And I see that in some of my staff and some of our participants who are newer in recovery, that fear that other people will find out about their past. And it's a tough weight to bear on your back. But now, like you say, now it's an area of pride. It makes us, like I say, sometimes with the way things are in the field we work, it makes us superstars at some point. That was one of the things that I think encouraged me the most in this, was how everybody looked forward to kind of like me being in spaces, because I brought that experience to the table and never was afraid to use my voice. I've never had a problem talking in any meetings or any time, but it's amazing to be able to do that, to be able to show other people that stuff. What type of advice would you have to somebody new in recovery?
Just to keep going. It took a long time for things that I thought, because I was better, that was going to be better.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It was like a little over 2 years before I was really restored to family and things like that. And it wasn't anything terrible. It was just like, I spent years destroying those relationships. They're not going to get better overnight, and I can see how a lot of people get really disheartened and discouraged in that waiting process, but there's so much, the waiting is purposeful, there's things in you that are getting pushed out that aren't profitable or good for you, and you're developing skills that you're just learning maybe for the first time ever, or have been so suppressed for years because of your use that you're having to wake them up and revive them and learn how they can be applied to your life then. So that would be my best advice, because I know that that's something that's a very common thread through anybody who struggled with addiction very long, is you've destroyed any healthy relationship that you had by the end of it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of us, we almost have to destroy every relationship, or we won't get it, because as long as we got somebody to call and get $5 from, we're not ready for recovery.
Yeah,
it's
true.
$5.
It's true. Yeah.
I think, man, the healing of families is one of the most difficult things, because, like I say, people want that stuff right away, especially a lot of husbands, with their wives, want, well, why can't she just see that I'm in recovery now? I'm different, we all want everything right now. One of the biggest disheartening things for me, I think, was that I felt like some of those family relationships never got mended in my life.
Yeah.
And I found out that, sometimes you burn bridges and those things can't be rebuilt. Even though, like with my own personal family, I started out as a juvenile, and I did my family wrong in a lot of ways. And even though we're cordial to each other now, a lot of that resentment has been gotten out of the way. That family connection, like you expect, had never returned.
Yeah.
There still seems to be almost that barrier sometimes. And I had to get to the place where I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's tough for some people, but overcoming those family things. How do you get along? Do you get along with your family well now?
Yeah. And they've always been supportive. It was just kind of from a distance for a little while, which is totally understandable.
Sure.
And that's something that even while I was in my program at Teen Challenge, I was there probably a good 6 months before I really understood why that was. You know, I still had a lot of resentment toward just that factor. But, you know, me working through that and all of that time in between to kind of let that sink in, I was still letting all the bad get out, you know, to be able to fill my mind and my heart up with the good, positive, productive things, and just a sound understanding of, you know, what I had caused myself
Yeah.
and what it was going to take to get to the other side. And like you're saying, if that was not possible, being able to just still be good and be myself and be healed going forward, even, you know, just however it turned out.
Absolutely. So, so you like working in recovery?
I love
Do
it.
you get to
Yes,
stick around in
yes.
the field for a little while, probably?
Oh, most
Yeah.
definitely.
What
Yeah.
type of goals do you see yourself working towards?
And
And you don't have to get
like
too
in
personal if you don't want to.
Well,
But just,
definitely education goals. So
yeah.
I am working towards an associate's degree at the community college Shawnee
Awesome.
there
Yeah,
in
my daughter goes
Olin.
to Shawnee.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
cool.
awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be in a class with
You
her.
might be.
So that's something that was a 5-year goal that I set for myself while I was at Teen Challenge, and I started back last summer. So I was about 3.5 whenever
awesome.
I started back towards that. So that, and then also working towards a certified peer recovery specialist certification starting here in a
great.
couple weeks. So definitely something that I want to pursue and continue to, you know, stay where I'm at and just grow in that, you know, with roots and then forward as well.
Absolutely. Now, you were talking a little bit about the CRS Success program that you're a part of.
Yes. Well, I just got accepted into it at Northern Illinois University. There
Right.
was 11, I think, universities that were awarded a grant to be able to hold programs, and they all look a little bit different from what I
Sure. Yeah,
understood.
they do.
So it'll be online in the first semester. I go up there twice just for resident weekends, but then the next semester, so next fall, I'll be doing an internship.
Okay.
So that'll give me that peer recovery certification to be able to. I've had opportunities to talk with people just from them coming in, which is really great because that just shows that Metropolis is already open to and understanding of what McDack wants to do, and
You guys have good momentum down there.
yeah, and so that's encouraging in and of itself. And just I feel rewarded in being able to even just listen. Sometimes I don't even really say anything, you know, and know that Holly is 100% on board and just great with helping the people in whatever way we can, wherever they're at and whatever they need. So
Absolutely. I know the only complaint that any of our recovery core people have really had. Well, one, the recovery navigators complain about the amount of training they have to do because it is like 10 hours of sitting in front of a laptop, and
yeah,
and I don't know what kind of history you had before this, but most of our staff have. Like, I come from the coal industry, we didn't sit in front of computers.
yeah,
I knew how to Facebook before I started into all this, and that was about it.
yeah,
You know, so sitting in front of a laptop for 10 hours trying to do some training, that's just mind numbing sometimes. But their biggest complaint, the people that go into the project coordinator, is they see the recovery navigators working with people,
yeah,
and that's what all of us get into this to want to do.
yeah,
You know, most of us don't think, man, I'd really like to get a good office job and manage coalition meetings and these things. You know, so I want to get in and help people.
yeah,
You know, so they tend to be a little jelly sometimes of our recovery navigators till they see them sit through those trainings for about
Yeah.
10 hours a day, and then they're like, nah, I like my project coordinator job.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's like McDack is I'm very blessed to be there because it's like the perfect place. You know, it is an office job, but they are really like boots on the ground trying to get stuff
That's
going.
awesome.
And it being such a small town, there really isn't a lot of places for people who are looking for help in any sort of regard to go. So they just come in the door, whether it's for themselves or a family member. And so that's really, I'm sure it was going on before, but it seemed like after the recovery resource event and it was in the paper, people were just coming in and just, you know, they read it, they didn't know exactly what it was, and they weren't able to make it to it, but they wanted to know what was going on.
Absolutely. And that's what's so amazing about all of this stuff is getting more energy out into the communities, doing more outreach. And you guys did have a pretty strong event down there. I know that was pretty packed. I know there were a lot of people there, like different vendors and stuff. It was a good time. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I think I cried a bunch while I was talking. Probably. I think I have learned that if I get tired, I cry a lot more when I do that speaking stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember being so tired being down there that day. I mean, I remember, I think there were like a couple times I could barely even keep going. And to me, that is the most, I don't mind being overcome by emotion, but when I can't talk, I feel like it gets a little much sometimes.
You held it down, though.
Oh my gosh, man. We have a running joke in our group now, because now it's not only me, because people see me cry. So now everybody, anytime we give out awards and stuff, I mean, there's just tears flowing all over the place around here. It's beautiful sometimes, but it's it drives me nuts sometimes. Have you had much opportunity to go around and tell your story and kind of share your experience with people?
A little bit, yeah. So pretty much every key interview that we've done, in some form or fashion, I've been able to, maybe not go into great detail, but just share that, I'm in recovery and it's been, a process, but, that's why I want to be a part of what McDAC is doing. So yeah, I think I've had a good amount of opportunities to share, and people are always really receptive to it for sure. Actually, this is on a different subject, but the Christmas care package program that we saw you guys at the jail.
How'd that go?
So well. The community received it way better than we could have ever thought.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we had a ton of donations.
That's awesome. We usually end up getting a bunch of donations for it. Like, we had one person that criticized us on Facebook, like, why are those people getting this and that, But other than that, man, the community tends to come out and support it really well. Other people do. We got one guy that I think that guy collected half the donations himself. And so we did. I don't know how many packages did you guys make?
45.
40. So I think we did like 99. So it ended up being a lot of stuff. I mean, man, oh my gosh, we had so many honey buns and all. I think all of my staff gained about 10 pounds leading up to that between honey buns and M&Ms and it just got, oh my gosh, which leading up to Christmas was just bad anyway. I've eaten so much sugar over the last couple of weeks. It's crazy. Yeah. But no, it's good to get an opportunity to tell your story like that and inspire people. And I know it really feels good to us to be able to tell our story. I try to give my staff more opportunity than I do to tell mine, to give them an opportunity, because a lot of times people come around, they want to hear want to talk to me, hear from me or something. But man, our staff have got so many great stories, and they're to me, I feel like they're so much better than mine. Because I've got just so much distance between mine, to hear them, it's like raw and it's inspiring to me, so that's really good. So you're going to go to school and get your associates. You think probably staying around Metropolis? Oh, I know what I was going to ask you about. So you said you stayed in Oxford homes after you got out of Teen Challenge. What'd you think about those?
I loved it. It was absolutely perfect for what I was needing. I just knew that I wasn't ready to go home, and I couldn't stay at Teen Challenge anymore, because it did work for me and it worked well. And I was just getting to where I knew I wouldn't be able to leave if I stayed very much longer. And so, it just helped me learn how to even accountability. That was something to be able to handle, a confrontation, I guess is the best word for it, whenever you know that someone's not doing right, but handling that in the right way, to be mindful of where they're at and helping them at the same time of protecting the whole household, so that was really beneficial. And just paying bills and getting up and getting yourself to work on time. At Teen Challenge, they had your schedule out and they did it for you, and so that was really helpful to learn how to navigate maintaining my recovery and taking care of myself mentally and spiritually and just physically in the world. So it worked wonders for me.
Yeah, I the reason why I asked is because I actually had lunch today with a guy from Oxford House. They're looking on expanding a bunch of new homes in our area. So they're starting to talk about Carbondale. Of course, that's where everybody always wants to start at. I'm like, bro, it's not the 80s. Carbondale ain't the Mecca it used to be in Southern Illinois. But anyway, it's hard to convince the people of that. But we talked about Massac County. We talked about Franklin County. Just trying to get. They seem to think that they're going to be able to throw up probably about 30 homes across the state in the next couple months.
Oh, that'd be great.
In the next 6 months. Part of our goal for our organization in 23 has been to start looking towards recovery residences. So for us to have somebody else come in and be able to start doing those recovery residences is like a win-win. And that's what we've been trying to talk to them about is we want to cater our services to be able to support stuff like that. Because we've had people from other organizations that ran Oxford style programs come in and say, well, your communities just can't support these programs. There's just not enough other resources. So that's why we try to do the resource centers. We want to be able to have those other support services so that if we can't do the home, somebody else will come in and do it. So hopefully they're going to come in and get started and get some Oxford homes going somewhere. We've got to get bed space for people. We've got to find some way to open up crisis shelters for one, somewhere not only for the substance use but for the people that deal with the chronic homelessness, somewhere to go, but somewhere for people to stay that 2 or 3 weeks they got to wait on that waiting period, because that's one of the hardest challenges is trying to get somebody into treatment and they're either too sober or they got too much stuff in their system. There's just all these challenges that seem to pop up. Getting somebody into a house for 3 or 4 weeks where they can wait, dry out a little bit, get a little recovery support, and get kind of primed to go to treatment, I think would even make it more successful. But just right now there is nowhere. One of the buildings, one of our resource centers in West Frankfort, we're looking at, hopefully, that we've opened it as a warming center the last couple of weeks. But hopefully one day we hope to be able to have some of that crisis bed space in there to be able to get people somewhere to go before they go to treatment. And then ideally have something for them to come back to. So one of the concepts that we've looked at is opening up a home, especially for women, that could house them for up to 3 months, pre-treatment or post-treatment, to where they would have somewhere safe and secure to come back to. And live and get their feet underneath them, but especially to have somewhere in those first few months, because especially for women, it is very hard to find good bed space for somewhere that's going to be productive, and there's just not enough sober living homes. And then what homes you do find, most of it's for men. So that's what we're going to look towards this year, is hopefully get into some type of recovery residences. We would like to have a men's and a women's. What I would really like to do, ideally, is have a men's home and a women's home, and then be able to train those residents through the Recovery Corps program. Be able to get them jobs, and then they can stay with us for the year, especially if we recruit them coming out of prison or coming out of treatment. Give them a safe, stable place to live for a year. Give them a job. They can work through Recovery Corps, get training, and then possibly either go somewhere else after that to work as a peer specialist, or stay in our area to work, hopefully in our programs and stuff. Kind of what we're going to look towards, hopefully. So far, we've done pretty good at reaching most of our goals. It's always a weird ride to get there. I don't understand how it works sometimes. I don't know how it's been for you, but I've only been doing this a few years, and I can't tell you what 6 months from now is going to look like, because in 6 months, the conversations will be so different. The grant money will be different. There will be different ideas on the table of what can be done. I find that is one of my biggest challenges now is now we're getting a year or two into a couple of grants that are going to go away soon. So what do we do after that? I got to come back and find some money after that, which causes us to look for different programs. How do we not become like the larger agencies that chase grant money and start programs, and then when that grant moves on, they move on? We want to create sustainable programs. My brain here. But no, you guys got any last minute burning desires or anything you want to share?
Well, I did forget to share.
Okay, absolutely.
Kind of a big thing that we're about to do.
Okay.
Is, we have we're going to do a focus group with people in recovery with lived experience. Yeah. And that's just in a couple weeks. And I don't know, I can't believe I forgot that, because
I know me either. Yeah.
We've been working on. But anyway, so we're really hoping, that we're going to start it out as a focus group, but we're hoping that it grows into basically like a recovery committee.
Yeah.
That, just meets with themselves and
that's awesome.
Comes up with ideas to bring back to the coalition. So, yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing like a focus session? What are you getting, like a panel together?
Yeah. Well, we're kind of putting it out there. If you're in recovery, have lived experience, either direct or indirect. Sign up, and then we kind of gonna have to limit the number of people, just because it's a focus group, but and then after that, kind of just see what we learn from that, put it with our needs assessment and go from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's excellent. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've tried doing a couple of town halls. We've got mixed results. We got about 45 at one of them, and the other one I think we had like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
But just to get people together in a space talking about some of the issues. I love that idea about having an advisory council. That would be so amazing to get people like that. Have you gotten much of a response from that, or how's that going? Do you think you're gonna?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I think
That's amazing.
we've had a lot of people sign up. So yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see how it goes and what we learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm looking forward to hearing y'all's results.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have you guys come to CERN and talk about that sometime.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Once you get done,
Yeah.
give us something good to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, if you guys have any last comments or anything, I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that wasn't too painful, and
No.